Obitur Solutions, a leader in secure document printing and a privileged partner in digital transformation, is proud to bring its official support to the group of SIDS Leaders Conference.
Welcome to this virtual conference of the Small Island Developing States Leaders Group. I'm Juliette Foster, and I'll be guiding you through 90 minutes of what I'm sure will be informed, lively and thought-provoking discussion on small island state policy development, taking place against the background of a damaging pandemic. Now, as we all know, COVID-19 is dominating the global conversation, with infection and mortality rates still ominous as the emphasis shifts to the equitable distribution of vaccines. What hasn't changed is the ongoing speculation about what the future will look like in a post-pandemic world, or indeed how it will affect small island developing states. Well, this is one of the reasons why we're here, because the virus has presented us with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to draw a roadmap where everyone has a viable stake. This is especially true of small islands, better known under the acronym SIDS. Just to put this in context, these are a small, distinct group of 38 UN member states and 20 non-UN members or associate members that face unique social, economic, and indeed environmental vulnerabilities. Now, COVID may have exposed human frailties, but it's also given over 63 million people in small island developing states a chance to have their voices heard and assert a role that goes beyond that of marginal contributors in any reconstruction. Now, the arrival of the revised Cotonou Agreement between the European Union and the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States is therefore very timely when we view it in that context. The deal itself amplifies those voices because, remember, 48% of the ACP members and 71% of Commonwealth members are small island developing states and represent 20% of the UN membership. So the big question, why should highly developed countries listen to 63 million voices? Quite simply because the issues that affect them impact all of us. In other words, their problems are our problems too. Continuing restrictions on access to financial resources directed at SIDS countries limits their ability to implement trade and environmental agreements. Likewise, climate change has impacted them in sustaining their indigenous and vulnerable economies. So how much of a game changer is the revised Cotonou Agreement? And does it give genuine political and economic clout to its SIDS ONCP signatories? Well, these are amongst the issues to be explored by our distinguished panel of experts. What's going to happen is that some of them will have 5 minutes to outline their case, after which there will be a discussion. Some of our panelists will be speaking for a little bit longer, 10 or 12 minutes. But because we only have 90 minutes, I will personally alert the panel with a time interjection when there are 2 minutes remaining on their speeches. So please do stick to your allocated time slots. Okay, that's the housekeeping. I'd now like to hand the floor for some words of welcome to His Excellency David Doyle, who's the Ambassador of St. Kitts and Nevis to UNESCO and also one of the instigators of this global SIDS Leaders Group. So Ambassador Doyle, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Juliette. Good morning and greetings to the distinguished panel of speakers and, of course, to you, the audience. Welcome to this, the first event of the Global SIDS Leaders Initiative, dedicated to the implications of the Cotonou Agreement on SIDS, this multitude of small island developing states across the globe. Over the coming months, this group will be exploring a range of topics associated with small island developing states, from covering the adverse impact of climate change to access vis-a-vis concessionary and innovating finance, from challenges of integrating ITC across all sectors, education, industry and healthcare, to strengthening food and agricultural security, to mention but a few of the topics. Now, the genesis of this this particular group and the debates, indeed, is driven by the need to raise the profile and, more importantly, the voice of small islands on the international agenda. The objective is to secure a better understanding of small islands' specific challenges, build mutual support at key international, transnational and regional negotiations, and ensure ultimately that small island states are an integral part to the solutions of the big issues that we are facing today, whether it be climate change or combating COVID-19. You know, one of the key characteristics of these islands is that they transcend 4 regions across the globe, from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, from the Atlantic to the Caribbean, collectively representing 1/5 of all UN membership. Yet, the remoteness, the size, limited institutional capacity on the ground, sometimes and frequently results in these islands facing particular challenges in getting their collective voice heard at bilateral and international level discussions. Ultimately, the purpose of this global SIDS leadership initiative is to seek to inscribe SIDS concerns, risks, opportunities and strengths on the global agenda. Thank you for listening and enjoy today's debate. Back to you, Juliet. Thank you.
Ambassador, many thanks for that. I would now like to hand the floor to His Excellency Jean-Paul Catteron, who is the Ambassador of the Solomon Islands to UNESCO and the FAO. He also co-chairs the GSL group. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juliette. A few words in French for French-speaking attendees. Je voudrais vous souhaiter à tous la bienvenue. Les SIDS sont des petits pays et ce sont des petits pays qui ont des gros problèmes. Et à la suite de multiples années de globalisation abusive dans certains domaines et maintenant de pandémie, les pays sont encore plus petits et les problèmes sont encore plus gros. Nous avons la nécessité de revisiter notre multilatéralisme et je vous donne rapidement un exemple. On parle à la FAO d'alimentation, d'agriculture et de sécurité alimentaire. On parle à l'Organisation mondiale de la santé, on parle de santé publique. Dans les îles du Pacifique, la santé publique dépend essentiellement de l'alimentation et de l'agriculture. Les maladies qui dévastent nos îles dans le Pacifique sont essentiellement des maladies non transmissibles, c'est-à-dire le diabète et l'obésité. Donc, il y a un problème et il y a un lien direct entre le développement de l'agriculture et la santé de la population. Pourquoi y a-t-il ce lien? Parce qu'il n'y a pas d'éducation à l'alimentation. C'est-à-dire qu'on parle d'éducation à l'UNESCO, mais on ne parle pas de la nécessité de former et d'éduquer au respect de soi-même et au bien-être de soi-même sur le plan de la santé. Et puis, si l'on veut reprendre tout cela et fixer une gouvernance qui soit efficace et dynamique, il faut un capacity building programme qui soit à même de former les gouvernements et les hauts responsables à l'approche de ce genre de problème. C'est-à-dire qu'on ne peut plus parler d'agriculture à la FAO, on ne peut plus parler de santé à l'OMS, d'éducation à l'UNESCO, de capacity building à l'UNITO sans fédérer tout cela et agir d'une manière conjointe et véritablement constructive. Voilà pourquoi nous avons pris cette initiative d'aborder les problématiques des SIDS de manière transversale. On ne peut plus maintenant parler et travailler entre soi. Et il y a en plus, je voudrais le souligner, à cause d'un défaut de ressources humaines et d'un défaut de ressources financières, une quasi-impossibilité pour ces pays d'être représentés dans les organisations internationales. Et ça, c'est un énorme problème auquel nous faisons face tous les jours. Où sont les SIDS? Comment peut-on aider les SIDS? Comment peut-on véritablement favoriser leur évolution et leur développement? C'est pour ça que l'accord de Cotonou est important. C'est pour ça que le soutien de l'Union européenne dans tous les domaines de la vie sociétale est quelque chose d'essentiel. C'est en fait l'introduction à la série de vidéoconférences que nous allons faire. Alors, je voudrais vous remercier tous d'avoir accepté de participer à cette rencontre et puis remercier particulièrement M. Reinders. Je connais M. Reinders depuis très longtemps et c'est un homme d'État. Il a l'expérience de la gouvernance au niveau national, il a une expérience très longue des affaires européennes, et je pense que pour nous, qui représentons des pays en difficulté, il est l'interlocuteur et surtout il représente la dimension humaine nécessaire à l'approche et au traitement de nos problèmes. Merci beaucoup. Je donne donc, d'après le scénario, la parole à M. Reinders, commissaire européen à la justice.
Merci beaucoup, M. Garteron. Et je voudrais vous dire que je suis très heureux de retrouver un certain nombre de représentants des CITES aujourd'hui. J'ai eu l'occasion d'avoir des contacts dans d'autres fonctions au préalable. Et je voudrais vous dire quelques mots sur le multilatéralisme, évidemment, auquel nous sommes tellement attachés, et quelques mots de deux éléments majeurs que nous mettons en avant dans ce multilatéralisme, parce que ça fait une partie intégrante de l'ADN de l'Union européenne, la solidarité et l'état de droit. But I will switch maybe to English to explain that we are committed to multilateralism. And first of all, to say that solidarity is part of who we are as Europeans and between one another. It is therefore part of who we are beyond our borders. And for example, because we are in a pandemic for the moment, as we work to procure vaccinations for Europeans, we made a commitment to ensuring universal access to vaccines everywhere on Earth, including the Solomon Islands, which last month became the second country in the Pacific Islands to receive doses via the COVAX facility. And you know that the European Union is the first donator for COVAX in this process. As an international institution ourselves, we have always and will always believe in multilateralism where every voice counts. For example, it is well known that without small island states working together with the European Union, days before the deadline in Paris, the historic climate agreement, the Paris Agreement, should never have been achieved. So it's very important to continue to work very close together. And I would say that we try so to do the same when we discuss about the rule of law. We try to have the same external policy than the internal policy. I don't want to enter into details, but the integrity of the building of the rule of law in the EU is an important part, of course, of our action. It still has, like any UNESCO World Heritage Site, a universal value to humanity. But as for any landmark of such value, it requires constant care, reparation, and sometimes modernization. I want just to say that we are working on the rule of law at home in the European Union to be able to discuss on the rule of law with some partners. And I want to describe all the details, but we have the capacity in the European Union now to provide every year a report on the rule of law. It's a preventive tool to describe the situation in all the 27 member states. I've started last year with the presentation in September of the first rule of law report, and I will go to the second edition in July about independence of the justice system, fight against corruption, media pluralism, and all the checks and balances in the institutional order. We have that to prevent different kind of negative evolutions about the rule of law, but also to exchange best practices. Of course, if it's not enough, we have the capacity to go to the Court of Justice at the EU level for infringements. It's also possible to use a very big tool, the Article 7 of our treaty, to suspend the voting rights of the member states if there are real breaches to the rule of law. And now we'll have also the possibility to make a link between the funding of different policies and the rule of law. And that's an important part because we'll discuss the same with the partners. And for the moment, we have the same discussions with the candidate countries in the Balkans, to give an example, the Western Balkans, but we have also the same discussions with our partner in Africa, in the Pacific Islands, and in the Caribbean. And it's very important to us to work on this. And I believe that it's important to have such a conversation with you today because the EU is firmly committed to supporting others' nurture to rule of law in any way we can. And as I said before, it is important to us at home, therefore, it is reflected in all external relations, including with many of you across all areas of the rule of law. Across the Pacific and the Caribbean, the EU is supporting the protection of fundamental rights. This is something we have a lot of experience at home, notably for women, children, and LGBTIQ people. To improve the transparency of public finance management, we are also providing technical assistance to the Office of the Auditor General in the Solomon Islands. We are providing support and technical assistance to our partners in the Caribbean through bilateral and regional interventions, including dedicated budget support programs. To improve access to justice in Fiji, the European Union is supporting justice sector reform to improve the delivery and accessibility of justice services for children and vulnerable people. And through our budget support, we have accompanied Jamaica's efforts in modernizing its justice system and strengthening the institutional and administrative capacity of justice institutions as part of structural reforms. This is also the type of support the European Union is providing to its own member states, because we want to develop such a kind of capacity at home, like I said, but we want also to support such a kind of development with our partners. For example, we are in the process of setting up in the European Union a European Public Prosecutor Office to investigate crimes against the budget in the EU. And of course, we are very open to share our experience in such a way with the different partners. And we discussed that to exchange best practices among member states. Last month, we have had again at the EU level a discussion about the rule of law in countries like Germany, France, Ireland, Greece, and Spain together to exchange the best practice and to see what are the possible developments. Of course, the media, it's an important part of the rule of law discussion. The nation of journalist Georgios Karevas in Greece outside his home last month was again underlined the EU's need to step up its work to protect journalists. Last year, we provided over €4 million to do this in the EU, and we want to work with our partners to be sure that it's possible to protect journalists also when they are investigating in different kind of issues and sometimes very sensitive issues. And we are, as you know very well, at the beginning of a new era in the EU's relation with the Pacific and Caribbean regions. Only a few weeks ago, my colleague, Commissioner Jutta Urpilainen,
2 minutes, Monsieur, 2 minutes.
Yes, took part, I will conclude, in the initialing with Togolese Minister of Foreign Affairs, Professor Robert Dussey, of the new partnership agreement between the European Union and members of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States. This was a major political achievement, and the negotiated agreement between the EU and our largest group of partner countries is entirely in tune with the international challenges and realities of today. And it will set up together as an international force to be reckoned with. We know, all of us in this partnership, that when we combine forces, as we did, I said, in Paris for the Paris Agreement, great things can be achieved. And so we will promote solidarity, rule of law, and all the values that we have in common. And we want to see that with all Pacific partners, for example, the focus is on building democracy and to build also peaceful and rights-based societies anchored by rule of law again and good governance. With our Caribbean partners, there is a focus on inclusivity and security in society, along with other priorities such as promoting again the rule of law, gender equality and human rights. The smooth negotiations on the rule of law in both cases underline our shared values and vision on access to justice and consolidating the rule of law. And we will continue to work like this. As many Europeans did, so too did many Icelanders risk their lives for a world free from tyranny. Because you know that if we are speaking so much about the rule of law in the EU, it's because we have started the construction of our union after the Second World War. And as US Admiral William Halsey famously said, Guadalcanal saved the Pacific. In the 78 years since the decisive victory against totalitarianism, we have been on the same page. I said a moment ago that the new partnership agreements are also entirely in tune with the realities and international challenge of today. And I want to conclude to say that it will be important to us to continue to share the same values, to try to help not only member states in the EU, but also many countries in our partnership with Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific Islands to develop their economic and social capacity in a good way, with an open society. And again, I will be very pleased to listen to the comments today in such a way, because it's not just an economic partnership. I want to insist on this. It's a partnership based on values, and we need to continue to promote those values in a multilateral development, because you know that in the last years it was very difficult to take part in multilateral discussions due to a specific approach in the US. But now, maybe with the new US administration, with an agreement like the Cotonou Agreement, it will be possible to go back to more and more multilateral discussions. So thanks for such an opportunity to say some words to you about our vision on the multilateralism in relation with solidarity, with human rights, and with the rule of law. But again, I will be very pleased to listen to your comments.
Thank you so much for that, Commissioner. Please stay with me, because there is a question that I'd like to put to you, because we know that so many things are happening. There are multiple other trade agreements between larger regional powers, intense deliberations happening on climate change between the likes of the European Union, China, and the United States. And I want you to put something in context. You referenced it, in fact, in that speech. How important is the Cotonou Agreement for SIDS when we view it in the wider multilateral context?
I said that before about the Paris Agreement. We have seen that when we have had to discuss about climate change, it was very useful to be on the same line with so many different partners. And with the Cotonou Agreement, we are working with many partners, not only in the region of the Caribbean and in the Pacific Islands, but also in Africa. And of course, I'm very pleased to say that when we are discussing on different kind of issues, it's very important to show that we are not alone. We try to do the same, to be very concrete, with the new partnership between the European Union and the US. We have put on the table a new agenda, not only to try to see if it's possible to reach some agreement between us, but also to take part together in international discussions. And the new structure of the agreement maintains the overall framework for cooperation with the Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific group of states, while deepening the partnership with each region, taking into account the regional specificities, challenges, and vision. But in such an agreement, that will give us also the possibility not only to take into account the specificities of the different partners, but to try to have an influence together at the worldwide level. And again, not only in discussions for new agreements like the Paris Agreement, but maybe also in different international organizations, like in the UN. Of course, I have had many opportunities to discuss with members of the SIDS in the UN, but I'm thinking also about the WHO when we are discussing about the pandemic. So with such an agreement now, we are reinforcing our capacity to be aligned and to work together in multilateral discussions.
Okay, so a wonderful note on which to end that question, but thank you so much for that, Commissioner Reinders. Now, let's move on, because I would like to welcome Baroness Patricia Scotland. She's the Secretary General of the Commonwealth of Nations. She is the 6th Secretary General and the first woman in the organization's history to hold the post. And she herself hails from a Caribbean small island state. Baroness Scotland, it's good to see you. The floor is now yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and greetings everyone. It's wonderful to be connected, and I greatly appreciate this valuable opportunity to share with you our Commonwealth perspective to address the impact of climate change on women and girls in our small island developing states. As you know, climate change is now a global crisis affecting our world at rural, urban, and cosmopolitan settings. Greenhouse gas emissions are more than 50% higher than in 1990, and climate-related disasters have exacerbated gender inequalities, especially amongst women who are in the forefront of the informal economy and small, medium enterprises. Statistics published by the United Nations show that women are more disproportionately impacted by climate change than men. The data can be relatively explained by several factors, which are social, economic, and cultural. Firstly, women are primary caregivers and providers of food and fuel, hence making them vulnerable when flood and drought occur, and this directly results and increases women and girl-headed households. Secondly, drought and degradation of land for farming and agricultural produce have affected women dominantly employed within the sector, and women will be likely experience poverty, insecurity, loss of livelihoods, and sexual violence in the wake of disasters, as recorded in most of our member states. In some of our states, we have seen a 300% rise in domestic violence just through this pandemic alone. So despite their vulnerability, women should not only be seen as victims of climate change, but as active agents and champions of adaptation and climate change mitigation. The Cotonou Agreement, now more than ever, is one of the tools to deliver the UN Sustainable Development Goal 13 to combat climate change and increase resilience, which is inclusive of women and other vulnerable groups. One of the key objectives of the Cotonou Agreement is, of course, the reduction of poverty and establishing a new, fairer, and more equitable world order, especially in trade agreements. And this is a true testament that our member states need to pull resources and skills to achieve their national development goals. So clear vision, dedication, and collective commitment are essential in order to facilitate new solutions for our member countries in combating climate change and attaining that new zero commitments. Now, as the Commonwealth, we have been available to all our partners with our toolkits, including the Connectivity Agenda for Trade and Investment, the Commonwealth Blue Charter, which aims to save our oceans and marine life, the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, which currently operates through its 12 advisors in our small Commonwealth countries to unlock green recovery and increase investment in climate resilient structures. But we've got the Common Sensing Project, which is supporting Fiji, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu to leverage Earth observation data around disaster and climate risk, which will be used for everyone. But in addition, we are developing the Universal Vulnerability Index, which is a multidimensional, inclusive index, which seeks to take into account the structural and non-structural aspects of vulnerability and resilience, responding to the needs of SIDS, which have been identified so well by the Honourable Prime Minister Harris and the OACPS Secretary General today, which we hope will secure the trenchant support of everyone at this meeting. But we also have our call for living lands and a living lands charter. Now we have, all of us, working together, the necessary experts on climate change to advise our member states on the ramifications of our trade deals on the ozone layer, our oceans, and our land. And we also have the data on the pollutants and the mitigation strategies that we need to forestall any incoming pandemic or catastrophe. The missing ingredient is that we now need to start working together to craft a more inclusive strategy for all our member states to fight climate change. The Commonwealth represents 54 countries, 1/3 of the world's population, but 40 of our members are members of this group. And I call upon all our friends and partners to support the Commonwealth Sustainable Energy Transition Agenda, as most women continue to use biomass as a source of fuel. And this can change through adoption of a greener and climate-friendly technology. It's concerning that we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. What we have achieved in the last 20 years of the Cotonou Agreement reflects the next 20 years, especially if climate change, mitigation, and adaptation remains a top agenda in all our trade agreements. So I believe we can do this. We must do this. The time is now, and it's down to us. And I thank everyone on this call for the trenchant support, not only in coming to the Cotonou Agreement, but also working together to make sure we deliver for the people that we love. So thank you.
Thank you, Baroness Scotland. That was a really impassioned speech there. And what I wanted to ask you was about your optimism, because you brilliantly outlined the case there about the connection between female vulnerability and climate change. This conversation now is happening against the backdrop of COVID-19. Again, that has exposed those frailties. Are there now better grounds, stronger grounds to be optimistic about breaking that dynamic, that if you are a woman in some of these countries, climate change perhaps makes you even more vulnerable than some of the cultural factors that may impose on you?
Well, I think it is, because you know what COVID has done? It's said none of us have anywhere to hide. This is impacting all of us, and it's bringing out all that ugly underbelly, and it's forcing us to look multilaterally. If there was a time when we thought narrow-based national interest was going to fix this, COVID told us that's not going to happen. And if you look at what we're doing, we've launched a Commonwealth Says No More campaign in relation to domestic violence, because the domestic violence has really gone up. It's affecting 1 in 3 women. It has a terrible impact on our economy. And those who are in climate vulnerable circumstances are even worse. So the fact that we've been able to highlight this and that we're working together, we're pooling the data. If you go onto our innovation hub, all the multilateral agencies are working together. I'm signed agreements with all our multilateral partners. It's down to us. You know, people have been looking to say someone else has to do it. There's nobody else. If not us, who? And if not now, when? So I think the time is now, and we have a choice. And everyone on this call is making it clear that we are choosing to work together. We are choosing to make the difference. And unless we make that choice, then the future for us is terrible. And I'm so proud of what we've done through Cotonou and the fact that everyone has been able to put their shoulder to the wheel. And I'm making total commitment from the point of view of the Commonwealth that we are in this for the long haul. And I'm really hoping that absolutely everyone comes on board with our Universal Vulnerability Index, which is, I believe, the most comprehensive, multi-dimensional index. I think, as Prime Minister Harris and my dear brother, the Secretary General, has said, this new change has to happen. We need a new infrastructure. We can't just have GDP being the only criterion by which it's judged, because it's not working. And so we have to start again. And I'm hoping everyone will get on board with our multidimensional index so that we will be able to deliver what we must deliver if we have to have a real future for our children.
Baroness Scotland, I'm going to put it to you, but I'm also going to leave the way open for other people to respond, because what has emerged is that SIDS do require special case funding because of their size. They have small populations, limited resources. They are environmentally vulnerable. They face more natural hazards perhaps than other countries, and also as well, they are remote from the international market. So given all of those factors, how does the post-Cotonou agreement actually address these specifics within the framework of this revised deal?
Well, I think this is a genuine opportunity and an attempt to come together in committee to say we have to start a new structure. And I think all of us are applauding that, celebrating it. It took a long time to negotiate, and we praise God for it. However, it will be meaningless unless we give it teeth and we create an implementable structure which says, and this is the difference it is going to make. And I think that's what's been so important by this discussion, because we've all been talking about what practical things can we do together to pool the information, the expertise, so that we can put it into the hands of those who need it. And that's why we have to think about the tools we have to create. And you'll hear us banging the drum on this multi-dimensional, multifaceted vulnerability index. And this is not something that's just come today. I have had this sounding in my head for about the last 30 years, where small states have been saying, see us, look at us, understand the reality of our lives, and understand that we are subject to these things which are not of our making. If you look at the pandemic, it was not of the making of the small states. If you look at climate change, it was not of the making of the small states. If you look at the economic devastation that has come as a result of the intersection between those two, you cannot say it was the fault of the small states. They fail to do that which they should properly have done to make a difference. And knowing that, then we have as a global community to say, what are we going to do about it? 32 of us, our member states, are small. And many of them face an existential threat, not just an ordinary threat, but a threat which says, I will not be here tomorrow. So I think for us, it is no more about talking. And I celebrate and I praise and I thank everyone who's made the Cotonou Agreement possible, because, you know, we were just holding on thinking, please let this happen. So we can celebrate that. But now it's down to us. Now we have to put flesh on the bone. We have to look at the strategic plans. We've got to look at the implementation possibilities. And the great thing is we do have that possibility. We have an opportunity to create a truly sustainable market, to reset this whole situation. But we haven't just to will it, we have to actually do it. And therefore, if you look at everything that the Commonwealth Secretariat are doing, is we're creating the toolkits, the implementation strategies, and we're reaching out to all our partners to say, please help us. Let's not concentrate on the things we disagree on. Let's concentrate on the things that we agree on. A bit like our humanity, 99% of our DNA is in common, but we tend to concentrate on that 0.1%, which makes us different and fascinating. But let's value that 0.1%, but let's join together on the 99.9%, which makes us human. And I think we have to be really frank. Cotonou is in part about fighting for the survival of humanity. And I wish it wasn't as dramatic as that, but it is. So I think we've never had a more important time. I'm thanking everybody who made this possible. I think you are heroes and heroines. Now let's deliver.
Thank you so much for your time, those who have been part of this really fascinating panel, and all of you who joined us online. We appreciate your presence. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and I hope to see you all sometime in the not too distant future. Take care. Merci. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Au revoir. Have a good day.
Overture Solutions, leader in secure document printing and a privileged partner in digital transformation, was proud to bring its official support to the Group of SIDS Leaders Conference.